G'day, my name's Wilfred West from Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia. Today's date is the 26th of the 3rd, 2015, and it's 9:27 in the morning. It's 13 degrees outside currently. A little bit windy, but that's okay. We're going to go for a drive down to the bakery, and then we'll go to the surf beach, and we'll see how we go from there. We'll go for a quick drive around town. See if we can find some kangaroos again. There's only been a couple of kangaroos been feeding there lately. Well, I hope you like this video, and if so, please subscribe.
And organised crime. Finally, the bill will increase the penalties for breaching non-disclosure obligations relating to examinations and hearings so that they are consistent with similar Commonwealth offences. Madam Speaker, the powers of the Crime Commission and the Integrity Commissioner are significant, but so too are the challenges posed by serious and organised crime and its enabling corruption. Serious and organised criminals exploit every advantage they can. The questioning powers of the Crime Commission and the Integrity Commissioner go some way to levelling the playing field. This bill will ensure that those agencies have the questioning powers they need and that the information they gather can be put to maximum use to protect the community. It will do so in a way that upholds fundamental principles of our criminal justice system about the right to a fair trial. Without these amendments, the Crime Commission and the Integrity Commissioner will struggle to fulfil their mandates and protect the community. They are vital for law enforcement's ability to understand, disrupt and prevent some of the most serious criminal activity.
I'd ask that this bill be read a second time.
I move that this bill be now read a second time.
The debate must now be adjourned. I call it on for Brian.
I move the debate be adjourned.
The question is that the resumption of the debate be made in order of the day for next sitting. Huh?
New tax system, Medicare levy surcharge, Fringe Benefits Act 1999. These amendments support the repeal of the Medicare levy exemptions provided for by the Tax and Superannuation Laws Amendment, Norfolk Island Reforms Bill 2015. I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you, Minister. The debate must now be adjourned. Member Crowe.
I move that the debate be adjourned.
The question is resumption of debate be made an order date for next day sitting. All those opinions are aye. Contrary no, the ayes have it. Clerk.
Health and other services compensation care charges
The Minister.
I present the Health and Other Services Compensation Care Charges Amendment, Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
Clerk.
First reading of bill to recommend the Health and Other Services Compensation Care Charges Act 1995 and related purposes.
The Minister.
I move that this bill now be read a second time. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Health and Other Services Compensation Care Charges Amendment, Norfolk Island Bill 2015 supports the extension of the Health and Other Services Compensation Act 1995 to Norfolk Island. The bill ensures that Medicare benefits, nursing home benefits and residential care subsidies are recoverable from persons on Norfolk Island who receive compensation or damages through a judgment or settlement. I commend this bill to the House.
The debate must now be adjourned. Member Crowe.
I move the debate be adjourned.
The question is that the resumption of the debate be made an order date for next day's sitting. All those other things are aye. Contrary no, the ayes have it. Clerk.
The Health and Insurance approved pathology specimen collection centres tax amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
The Minister.
I present the Health Insurance Approved Pathology Specimen Collection Centres Tax Amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
Clerk.
First reading of bill to make the Health Insurance approved pathology specimen collection centres tax act 2015.
The Minister.
This bill be now read a second time. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Health Insurance Approved Pathology Specimen Collection Centres Tax Amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015 will ensure that the tax on the grant of an approval for a specimen collection centre under the Health Insurance Act 1973 and for related purposes also applies to persons who reside on Norfolk Island. I commend the bill to the House.
I thank the Minister. The debate must now be adjourned. Member for Crowe.
I move the debate be adjourned.
Member for Crowe. The question is the presumption debate be made in order today for next day of the city. All those that have been say aye. To contrary no, the ayes have it. Clerk.
Health Insurance pathology fees amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
The Minister.
I present the Health Insurance Pathology Fees Amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
Clerk.
First reading of bill to enact the Health Insurance pathology fees act 1991 and for related purposes.
The Minister.
I now move that this bill be read a second time. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Health Insurance Pathology Fees Amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015 works with the Health Insurance Act 1973, which has been amended in the Norfolk Island Legislation Reform Bill 2015. This bill relates to the fees payable for certain purposes of the Health Insurance Act 1973, such as the acceptance of an approved pathology authority undertaking and the approval of premises as an accredited pathology laboratory. I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you, Minister. The debate must now be adjourned. Member for Crowe.
I move the debate be adjourned.
The question is the presumption of the debate be made in order today for the next day of sitting. All those that have been say aye. To the contrary no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
Aged care accommodation and security levy amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
The Minister.
I present the Aged Care Accommodation Payment Security Levy Amendment Norfolk Island Bill 2015.
The Clerk. The member for Ford.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and on behalf of the Standing Committee on Tax and Revenue, I present the committee's report entitled Tax Disputes.
Wilfred Van Manen, Liberals,
I ask
Queensland.
leave of the House to make a short statement in connection with the report.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted. The member for Ford.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Disputes between taxpayers and the Australian Taxation Office are an unavoidable feature of our tax system. This inquiry has come about because stakeholders and taxpayers have expressed deep concern about that the tax office does not always use its powers in a judicious manner, does not always treat taxpayers fairly and with respect. The committee acknowledges there have been improvements over the past 4 years
demonstrated a trend to settle matters earlier. The current Commissioner has embarked on a project of reinventing the tax office. However, the severity of outcomes for some taxpayers convinced the committee that an inquiry was warranted. The committee commenced the inquiry in June 2014 with a focus on small taxpayers and individuals. The committee requested the Inspector General of Taxation to conduct a similar inquiry, concentrating on large taxpayers and high wealth individuals. One of the key issues in the inquiry was the degree of separation between auditors and objection officers. Over the last 20 years, both of these functions have been within the compliance area of the tax office. So, Deputy Speaker, the committee received evidence that objection decisions are now less likely to demonstrate independence, or that a taxpayer's matter has been freshly examined. Recently, objections for entities with a turnover of over $100 million annually have been transferred to the legal area in the tax office. The committee's recommendations build on this reform. The committee believes that an additional second commissioner should be created that manages the objections and appeals. There should be stricter controls on communications between auditors and objection officers. This has been a prior recommendation of the Inspector General of Taxation in relation to large taxpayers and high wealth individuals. Another important matter is how the tax office manages cases involving fraud and evasion, or alleged fraud and evasion. The committee received evidence that auditors sometimes allege fraud or evasion without turning their mind to the question of whether fraud or evasion actually exists. The taxpayer then has the burden of proof against an allegation for which the tax office may have had only limited evidence. The committee believes that findings or allegations of fraud or evasion should only be made by an officer from the senior executive service. The committee would also like to see the burden of proof on these issues switch back to the Commissioner once the statutory record-keeping period for taxpayers has expired. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are two major issues in the inquiry whether the tax office occasionally refuses to engage with taxpayers, and that the tax office can sometimes make unreasonable requests for information from taxpayers, both in terms of volume and deadlines. The committee has made recommendations to address both these issues. Many people contributed to this inquiry, and I would especially like to thank the previous chair of the committee, the member from Bennelong. This member's leadership helped establish the committee and contributed to the quality of the evidence and goodwill during the inquiry. I'd also like to thank the Inspector General for conducting his review of disputes from the perspective of large taxpayers and high wealth individuals. The Inspector General's report was released last month. The committee has referred to it at various points in this report. Further, the Inspector General has built up a body of work that the committee was able to refer to during the inquiry. The committee has taken the opportunity to reiterate some of the Inspector General's prior recommendations. I'd also like to take this opportunity, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to thank my fellow committee members and the individuals and organisations that assisted the committee through submissions and giving evidence. Finally, on behalf of my fellow committee members, I'd like to thank Mr. David Monk and the staff of the Tax and Revenue Committee Secretariat for their commitment and diligence throughout this inquiry. The committee believes that the Tax Office is a well-run, highly professional organisation, and that the vast majority of disputes are handled in an appropriate and fair manner. And the committee does not wish to see this report as lessening the Tax Office's role in collecting revenue legally due. However, there is scope for improvement, and full implementation of the committee's recommendations will produce a fairer tax system, leading to better outcomes for taxpayers and also for the Tax Office. I commend the report to the House.
I thank the member for Ford. The member for Macmillan.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the Committee of Privileges and Members' Interests,
Russell Broadbent, Liberals, Victoria.
I thank the member for McMillan. Member for Brown.
Mr Deputy Speaker, can I present
Philip Ruddock.
the report of the Australian Parliamentary Delegation's field visit to Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon, and ask leave of the House to make a short statement in connection with the report.
Is leave granted? The member for Tiffany? Leave is granted?
Thank you, Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. This was the inaugural visit of its type by the Australian Parliament, and the visit was a format designed to allow myself and the member for the opposition whip, Mr Hayes, to explore and examine a particular issue, and this issue was really not one, as we thought about how a field visit might progress, be described as a jolly or a junket to a European destination, or to talk with our close friends in the United States. This was to look at a very significant humanitarian issue of concern facing this world right now. The theme of the visit was about asylum seekers and to have an understanding of the current conflicts in Syria and Iraq, which have resulted in the movement of large numbers of people into their neighbouring countries. We had the opportunity of visiting Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon, and to see the impact that this crisis is having in those countries. You will find an acknowledgement of the very large numbers of people, both those serving the international community, those involved in the governments of the respective countries, and our officials that we met in Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon. I might say I found this extraordinarily insightful, and I'm glad we had the opportunity at the end of last year on our return to be able to hold a forum and to brief members on this conflict. The conflict began only some 4 years ago, and it's had an enormous impact. Something of the order of 191,000 people have been killed as a result of this conflict. As at November last year, an estimated 10.6 to 10.8 million people were in need of humanitarian assistance inside Syria, and this included approximately 6.5 million people internally displaced, another 2.9 to 3.2 million Syrians registered and awaiting registration with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in the adjoining countries. This conflict has led to an extraordinary increase in the numbers of refugees and displaced people. And when you look at the comparative figures and the way in which they have increased, we've seen from 2010 UNHCR reporting 33.9 million people of concern globally. When you look at this particular conflict, it's added to those numbers so significantly that they have gone to 46.3 million people of concern. In this report you will find some very insightful discussions about resolving this crisis. The conclusion that we have drawn is that there is unlikely to be any quick resolution. And this problem is going to continue. And there are various suggestions as to how you might be able to deal with it, but I think people need to understand that it has reached such a crisis point now that adjoining countries like Lebanon and Jordan and even Turkey are looking at closing their borders, restricting the opportunities for people to flee. Turkish officials have been talking about trying to create safe zones in Syria, which they describe as no-fly buffer zones to which people might flee. and approaches like this are hardly likely to have any impact. If members read the report, they'll find some interesting photographs as how close we got to situations of potential danger. But these are risks facing people, millions of people in this area every day. One of the issues we have looked at is not only how the international community should be responding to this situation, because I have to say, I think it is almost out of sight, out of mind to most Australians. But with the prospect of the borders being closed in Lebanon, are facing enormous problems in being able to respond in a positive way to this situation. The report details something of the way in which the countries that we have mentioned have been responding, but it highlights the need for further international support for Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon that are under such horrific pressure. And we recommend that the Australian government do its part in sharing the burden of the crisis in the Middle East and make appropriate commitments at the upcoming UNHCR pledging conferences, because these countries are going to need particularly support. For me, I've travelled extensively in this region before. I know something of Lebanon, something of Jordan, something of Turkey. The extent to which people in these surrounding countries are burdened needs to be acknowledged, needs to be understood. We are not experiencing people seeking to flee to Australia as asylum seekers as a result of this issue, but it shouldn't in any way diminish our willingness to respond to this report and to look at ways and means in which Australia can help those countries who are particularly burdened at this time.
I thank the member for Barrera. The member for Fowler.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to augment the Father House report.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted. Thank the member for Barrera. The member for Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chris Hayes, Labor, New South Wales.
The member from Barrera, the Father of the House, that I did have the honour of attending this first parliamentary field visit to Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon. To put in context, this visit was, in fairness to the member for Barrera, his view that he successfully argued amongst the committee considering this is that the positions that are being adopted in the Middle East at the moment, the conflict that was unfolding is likely to affect decisions throughout the globe, including Australia, for some time into the future. And therefore, if we are to be serious in looking at issues such as asylum seekers, we should actually look clearly at those aspects which are right at the crux of this, and particularly as it occurs at the moment in the Middle East. Now, this is a conflict, by the way, that started in 2011. It started as a protest movement and has developed into a full-scale civil war. No longer just impacting on the people of Syria or throughout the Middle East. This conflict has implications globally. We've seen much reported about the fragmentation of the Free Syrian Army. We now see the involvement of ISIS or Daesh, as it's referred to. We've been advised by many in the UN of various remnants of the former Ba'athist-led Iraqi military are engaged. But the point being, this escalation of the conflict is beyond the estimations of all the authorities at the time. As a matter of fact, when we visited, particularly when we not extending beyond 3 months, because the expectations of the United Nations was this was a conflict that would not exceed 3 months. But what we have now is a conflict where there is no end in sight, and certainly it probably will not involve the military solution. But the consequences of this, and this is what we particularly wanted to look at, is the consequence on people. In terms of the refugees, well, Syria has a population of 12 million people. More than half of that population is now displaced. We know that there's been probably by this stage about 200,000 people killed in the conflict. And we know also from the UN that over half the international aid budget at the moment is directed to the displaced people and the Syrian refugees. Half of the total world aid budget is now directed there for a conflict which was not originally thought would extend beyond 3 months.
Well, that's a rainbow. Oh, wow. Beautiful.
The other thing that was just painfully obvious to us is that the countries bordering Syria, namely Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon, are hosting the vast majority of refugees. And according to the UN, I think in the vicinity of 97%. For Jordan, I think they're hosting something about a little over 600,000, almost 20% of their country. For Turkey, about they're hosting about, I think it's 1.3 million refugees. And the Father of House has just indicated in terms of Lebanon, a country with almost close to 4 million people, almost 2 million refugees. That would be in an Australian context, such as something for us having about 12 million refugees temporarily on our doorstep and needing big education, needing health, needing all the assistance that would generally apply. But countries with very limited budgets, by the way, they all indicated the economic strains they were facing. The consequences of this development meant that in many instances a number of the companies in their areas were getting rid of or terminating local engaged employees and putting on Syrian refugees, because essentially they would just work almost for food. And I can understand if you're that desperate, you probably would, but it is also leading to very significant resentment in those host countries at the moment. The population of those host countries being seen at the sharp end of this, being seen relatively unassisted by the international community. I know there is assistance there, but certainly not proportionate to the load that they are carrying, such a humanitarian load that they are carrying, which we are all in the global community very much in their debt. One stage which I think actually personally brings this experience of visiting over there, not simply spending time in the refugee camps and seeing the children, which I'll come back to, but at one stage we visited the Jordanian border guards and their headquarters up right adjacent to the Syrian border. Very pleasant, they were very kind to us, they were very hospitable and treated us to a nice lunch, and fantastic scenery. They could point out the border of Syria. And here's this town, it was some 10 kilometres away, I think, farther than the house. Anyway, we agreed, together with the Australian ambassador, to do a piece with the leadership of the Syrian border guard, a piece to camera. So we went outside and they set their tripods up and they got the cameras set. And as we were speaking to camera, people behind the camera, the audience if you like, started pointing behind us. As we turned around, Philip Ruddick, myself, were hit by the percussion. What the people could see was the smoke plumes going up. As we turned around, we felt the percussion from the explosions. There was an artillery attack taking place on a town some 10 kilometres away. So while we were hosted by the Jordanian border guard, they're in safety.
My name's Wilfred West from Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia. signing off. Now this is sad, but it's part of life.
Significant this is.
Unfortunately.
And this is not something you just can disengage with.
Thank you for watching my videos, and all comments are welcome. You'll have a great day now.
And we'll report this when we get back to our parliament. This is something, a visit that you could not come away from this being unaffected. And as the member of Browra indicated, we did visit refugee camps everywhere we went. And one of the consistent things that was put to us by everyone we spoke to, and through interpreters, they wanted to go home. That's all they wanted. They wanted to go home. But there, as I said earlier, there is no end.